Next stop everywhere.
Again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS, ready to talk not classic Who, not modern Who, but Doctor Who, as in DR period Who, the second feature film with my wonderful co-host, wonderful friend, and fellow time traveler who is being very generous and sending me Elliot S. Magan books. Jesse Jackson. How you doing, Jesse?
I am great, Charles. You mentioned being a fellow time traveler. I talked to I was doing a Set Listing Bruce podcast on Saturday, and Peter Cushing, who is a Springsteen blogger, and he said, it's a boring question when people are like, oh, what would you do with a time machine? He said, I just would go see Springsteen concerts. And I said, well, it just so happened Charles and I, my buddy with Next Stop Everywhere, did an episode where we actually limited ourselves, because he would have said, I'm just going to go back and see all the, the Police concerts where we could do one. And so we had so hopefully he'll go back and listen to that one. I'm really excited to talk about this one because I was in the mood to watch this one. When we originally watched the first one, I wasn't know what I was getting into. This time I did, and I'm especially happy because we may break into a WandaVision discussion. We may talk about The Boys, because our third brother in this triple play is joining us today.
Yes, so joining us all the way from the Fandom Zone Podcast, and of course, Gold Standard of the Oscars Podcast, and Happiness and Darkness, the superhero movie podcast. Please welcome back after far too long, DJ Nik. How you doing, Nick?
Hey, guys. Well, thank you so much for that incredible introduction. I mean, I'm seriously blushing here. And I would like, and as of this recording, of course, I'd like to say, as my great-grandma Sally would say, Banochte Naheda Patrick Ort, to all our wonderful Irish listeners out there. Very happy St. Patrick's Day for sure.
Well, and Irish podcasters as well, right? Because
of course,
yours truly is certainly Irish in that regard. So happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. So we are celebrating not by drinking, not by partying. We're celebrating by talking 1966 Peter Cushing Doctor Who movie. So take that.
I am drinking green tea. So there we go. Right?
There you go. Jesse, you do have a kind of a green shirt on, don't you?
Yes, I did wear a green because of work. I'm going into the office, so yes, I had my green shirt on. And at work today, we gave out little bitty little pots, and then we had 3 gold coins in each little pot. So every employee got a bucket of gold coins today to celebrate.
Yes. Nice. St. Patrick's Day, or as Irish people like to say, this is the day that we all cringe when everybody tries to do a fake Irish accent.
Absolutely.
And bring out all their Irish leprechaun stereotypes.
Yes.
So, yay. Thanks for that, guys.
Yes.
But we're talking Doctor Who today, and this is a very interesting one because, like Jesse said, it's been a long time since we've talked the first movie, Doctor Who and the Daleks. Way back. This was like our 27th episode. Way, way, way back in the day. So I guess we figured, well, hey, it's time to get around to the second one. So we're going to talk Daleks Invasion Earth, 2150 AD here for episode 223. It only took us almost 200 episodes to get to it, but we got there, right? It's right there in the label. Next stop everywhere. Sometimes we go other places and not necessarily in the right order. So we got there, though.
We sometimes, right, we travel in weird ways.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So this one is very interesting to talk about. It recently was re-released on Blu-ray. So yours truly took advantage of that and snagged me a copy, which is right here behind me. Obviously, out there in podcast land, you can't see it, but hopefully Nick and Jesse can. So I thought, yeah, this is one we need to talk about. And Nick asked about what one he could discuss, and we talked about things. And he mentioned, well, hey, you want to do a Peter Cushing Doctor Who movie? And I said, well, we got Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD still available. So I guess that's what he was in the mood for. So Nick, what was it about this? While I'm thinking about it, what was it about this that made you want to discuss it?
Well, first off, I mean, you guys said the first time I believe that you discussed the first outing of Peter Cushing as Doctor Who was on your 27th episode. And, since then, many moons have passed, which makes me think, I wonder whether they were voluntarily avoiding this sequel.
No.
No.
I think nobody else wanted to talk about it. So it just never came up.
I mean, I suppose this could almost be considered the Howard the Duck of the Doctor Who show, movies, or what have you.
Right.
But here's the thing: I'm a huge fan of Peter Cushing, more for the stuff that he did, horror movie wise and what have you. And we will actually soon be talking about him on Hamlet, because he actually appeared in Laurence Olivier's Hamlet as Osric of all people in that film. Yeah, of course, a very, very young Peter Cushing, naturally, but. And I just love this man to death. I mean, granted, it does take major leaps and major departures from what we know as Doctor Who canon, if you will. And they take a lot of liberties also with the fact that they call him Doctor Who and they don't refer to it as the TARDIS, but just TARDIS. And the fact that he is, a crackpot professor who has created this time machine and is not an alien. So it was mainly because the fact that I just love Peter Cushing. He's a fantastic actor. And I thought, why not just go off the regular path, or the road less traveled, if you will, and just take this one on. And I also own the Blu-ray myself and watched it and was like, yeah, this would be cool to talk with Charles and Jesse.
Yeah. Obviously, I think this movie might play a little better on, say, Drunk Cinema, where Zan and I would make fun of it, but...
yeah.
But I am curious about your reactions, Jesse, especially yours, going into this, because I'm guessing this is the first time you've seen this movie.
Yeah, it is, and I'm curious, I'm watching it via BritBox.
Right.
And it has that very 60s... feel
look.
both in soundtrack and music. So how does it look in a Blu-ray? Do the colors pop?
Yeah, actually,
restored?
Generally they do. I think so.
Yeah.
They're very vivid.
Mm-hmm.
But, a lot of these, obviously it takes place in a mine, so there's not a lot of color to that. And especially, in this 2150 AD setting where at least London has been pretty much devastated by the Daleks. There's not a lot of sunshine and rainbows going on.
Yeah.
I mean, it has visually, you can tell it has been treated for sure. That's definitely the case, Jesse. I mean, but as Charles was pointing out, you don't really get too much of an opportunity to see kind of too many bright colors, but I think you can somewhat see that it is, not, let's say, taken directly from VHS and put on disc. Yeah. It has definitely, I think, been treated.
Yeah, I mean, this was originally filmed in CinemaScope, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was.
So it obviously, it's got that big widescreen look to it. And I think once you get inside the Dalek spaceship, you start noticing the colors more. You get that bright sheen of the metals. And interestingly, and this is one of the things about these Peter Cushing Doctor Who movies. Remember the time period they came out. These was like 1965, 1966. So by this point, we still hadn't received Doctor Who in color on the TV series. That doesn't happen until 4 years from this point, 1970.
Interesting point. I had not
with Spearhead
realized
from
that.
Space.
Okay.
So this is essentially the first quote-unquote color Doctor Who. Doctor Who in color.
Even though it is very reminiscent of the Third Doctor adventures for some, in some aspects, I feel, especially with the over-the-top music which was very typical of the Third Doctor era.
Yeah, it does have a very Third Doctor feel to it. Even though this is Peter Cushing's Doctor, but Cushing's Doctor, he's kind of garbed in almost like a Pertwee-like smoking jacket.
Which may be why I also went to this, Charles, because I have a particular affectation for the John Pertwee era.
Oh,
so that's
okay.
probably why I went to this Doctor. And Granted,
and he does have
like
kind of a white pompadour thing going on.
Yes, he does.
Yeah,
yes, he does.
he's more of the dandy doctor, before the doctor became a dandy, if you will. But
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I will have some things to say about the score, which I was not particularly happy with, and we will get into it. But yes, less said about that, the better, I guess.
All right. So just get a little background before I want to get everybody's general reactions to this. So this was released on August 5th, 1966. Written by Milton Subotsky, who wrote the previous movie, Doctor Who and the Daleks, that movie was based on The Daleks, the very first story with the Daleks, written by Terry Nation, so essentially the second Doctor Who story ever. And this movie, consequently, was based on the second story, The Dalek Invasion of Earth, which was also by Terry Nation. And this was directed by Gordon Flemyng, who also directed Doctor Who and the Daleks. He also directed a couple of movies that you may or may not have heard of. They're a little obscure. The Split and Great Catherine, I thought were of note. But apart from that, I don't think there's much, unless you're a really hardcore cinemaphile, you would probably recognize. Maybe, Nick, you might, because this is more of an international cinema flavor over...
I am familiar with those titles, yes.
Okay, all right. So maybe not so much for American audiences. Let's just put it that way.
It's more, yeah, exactly, because in fact, I'd actually be surprised if America had known of those, because those were already kind of obscure in Europe as well, so...
Although my guess is that my Drunk Cinema co-host, Zan Sprouse, probably knows about them because she knows just about everything. So.
It would not surprise me.
It would not surprise me at all, yeah. So what's everybody's general reactions regarding this movie? Obviously, like I said, it's based on the Dalek Invasion of Earth, very loosely based, emphasis on the loosely. So it's very different. Susan, instead of being a teenager, is a little girl. The doctor, like you guys were talking about, he's more like an eccentric Earth professor, inventor, as opposed to a Gallifreyan Time Lord. Ian has been replaced by this new character named Tom Campbell, who is played by Bernard Cribbins, who may be very familiar with, modern Who fans, of course, as playing Wilfred Mott in the David Tennant era. And then we have Louise, who wasn't in the first film, but is apparently the niece of Doctor Who, and is just introduced in this movie for some reason.
Yeah, just randomly.
Just random. We don't even know, because the previous sister, Barbara, who is like the older, instead of Barbara Wright, the school teacher, Barbara Who, I guess, was the older sister of Susie Who. It kind of gets like a little bit of a Dr. Seuss feel when you think about it, all those Who's in Whoville. But there's no explanation for why Barbara isn't in this movie. There's no explanation for why Louise is here instead. She just is there for no reason, because we didn't bring back the previous actress, I guess, for this one. So I want to get everybody's thoughts. So who wants to go first? Jesse, do you want to go first about your general thoughts on this movie?
Sure, I'll be glad to. Because I went in with this mindset, and to give you a fair... I watched the first half of the movie over the weekend, and then got distracted doing other things. And so I ended up watching the second half last night. And I was like, this is a really good movie if you were back in the day when you didn't have video on demand and you're flipping through the channels and you kind of like, Saturday afternoon theater on the UHF channel.
Right. And
you pull this up and you're like, I want to watch this science fiction movie. And it's a lot of fun. There's plenty of adventure. It is very dated, with the CinemaScope and the score. But I was surprised how much I enjoyed the movie. And I think because I went in knowing that this was, and campy is the wrong word, because it's not overly campy. It's just of the time,
right,
a B movie, science fiction movie.
Okay.
That just and you go, it really isn't Doctor Who.
Yeah.
It could just easily be, Professor Y and the invasion of the Daleks,
Right.
And when you think of that, you just kind of enjoy the ride. I did anyway.
Yeah. For one thing, it just reminded me that they don't even use the actual Doctor Who theme music in this.
No.
It's like, this Doctor Who version has, like his own theme. that isn't anywhere near anything you'd find on the television show. So essentially, this has stripped out a lot of the TV show. The credits, for this swirling smoke of the credits from the William Hartnell era, the swirling gas has been replaced by a spinning whirlpool of water. And so it comes off just very, like, I want to say, like, barely Doctor Who. It's like it's DeWino. It's Doctor Who in name only, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that's how I watched it, right? I think the reason I was so disappointed in the first one, I'm like, it's a Doctor movie of Doctor Who. No, it's not. This is, and a friend of the podcast, Ken Schaefer, who's been on there, my other longtime friend, who Charles and Ken both were like both Daleks or Cybermen on my shoulder. You should watch Doctor Who. You should watch Doctor Who. And he collected.
I like to be the master personally, but that's
okay. You can be the master. All right, that sounds fair.
Yes.
He collected B movies, and that was his favorite. The cheesier and the goriest. So this wasn't a horror B movie, but it was kind of a science fiction B movie, and it was just fun for that. Nick, how about you?
Well, here's also the thing, Charles, you were pointing out the fact that this is literally almost barely Doctor Who.
Right.
Also, I mean, it should be noted that I believe they don't even mention in the credits either Sidney Newman or Verity Lambert, who actually created the character.
No, they don't.
And you'd think they would, which makes you wonder whether they were only able to talk to Terry Nation, because they say it's almost like setting up Terry Nation, who created Doctor Who, the way they put it out there. So it makes you wonder whether of all the BBC team, etc., they could talk to, Terry Nation was the only one who said yes. And so, because he obviously has the rights to Daleks.
Right.
And so you're thinking maybe because of that, like, okay, we'll take the Daleks over, but we won't do any of the other stuff because the BBC doesn't want us to do this. And so that's why.
Well, I'm pretty sure the BBC has the rights to the name TARDIS. So they probably figured all we need. It's like all we need is TARDIS. I don't know if that was in
effect already by then. Exactly, but I don't know if that was already in effect by then, because also the fact they changed also the origin story, the fact they made him a human,
right? Which
makes me think that there might have been some disagreements, legally speaking, on what you can do and what you can't do.
Could have been.
And that's probably why it's not. A lot of Whovians don't even consider this canon, and they don't even consider Peter Cushing's Doctor to even be a part of the conversation. But outside of that. I think Jesse said it best. It is very much a B sci-fi movie. I mean, it's hard. I have a lot of love for this film, but it's very hard to take it seriously because you can't take it seriously, and it's very light-hearted fun. I mean, it's the type of movie that you get a nice bag of popcorn or nachos or what have you, and just sit back and enjoy it, because that is what it is. It's just pure entertainment. And I enjoy it for the entertainment value more than anything else. And plus, as I said, I do enjoy Peter Cushing. But yes, the story-wise and stuff is very threadbare. It's just one of those kind of Friday night films that you watch and like, okay, you're going to get some entertainment out of it. It's not the Doctor Who proper that we know and love, but it's got a place, I think, in for certain Whovians anyway, when it comes to things they love outside of the regular stuff.
Well, I think one of the first times I saw this movie was late at night, like maybe 1 or 2 in the morning on, there's a station outside of Cleveland, Ohio that, I grew up in Medina, Ohio, just south of that. And there was a TV show called Big Chuck and Little John. And it was a very much a kind of like, not really a horror host type TV show, not like in the Elvira way, but it was more like, kind of like a sketch comedy show that would just kind of show these really offbeat, quirky B, C, and D movies that, and this just happened to be one of those. So, for my first exposure with this was, I just appreciated it because, it's the kind of movie that like you said, you would just watch for it to be entertained, not take it seriously, just enjoy it. It's very much a popcorn movie, and especially a late night popcorn movie. That it's something like like college students will watch at 3:00 in the morning.
So, promise I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
Last night at 10 o'clock Central Time. I got off. I had a podcast, and so Linda was already in bed. I got 2 bags of Skinny popcorn.
Okay.
And I pulled up the TV and watched it, eating it, and had a blast. I mean, so you were spot on, Charles. This was nothing changing the world about it, just a lot of fun.
Yeah, and there is no surprise. I actually read Peter Cushing's autobiography, and he does not mention either of the Doctor Who movies. Is there any wonder? I mean, Granted, of course, Peter Cushing has done very, very sort of loftier work than this.
Yeah.
Pay no attention to the Doctor Who movies behind the curtain.
Yeah.
The man's been in Best Picture winning movies, and he's been in historically changing cinematographic movies like Star Wars, for crying out loud. I can see why he's not going to mention either of these two, though I will suggest, folks, just to get a little bit ahead of myself, if you'd really like a good autobiography with a lot of that good old British humor, check out Peter Cushing's autobiography, because it's hilarious and so informative of the kind of people that he worked with, because you get, anecdotes from Christopher Lee and folks like that, because obviously he was very, very friendly with people like Vincent Price and Christopher Lee, and there's quite a lot of that about those two folks as well.
Well, I think that's a great segue into our casting. So let's run down this cast. Obviously, like Nick said, Peter Cushing plays Doctor Who, best known, of course, to sci-fi fans as Grand Moff Wilhuff Tarkin. Yes, Wilhuff is Grand Moff Tarkin's first name, in case you're wondering. But he's also played Sherlock Holmes in The Hound of the Baskervilles, the 1959 version, which was a Hammer movie, a Hammer production. And that was just on Turner Classic Movies earlier this week. So I really appreciated that. And, really I got into that because I love the Hammer horror films. I love the look of Hammer films. And Cushing obviously is known to a lot of Hammer horror fans as playing primarily Baron Victor Frankenstein.
Correct.
And Dr. Van Helsing, or some version thereof, in various Hammer horror films with Christopher Lee and other great actors. So if check those out. I mean, there's been, especially like the Christopher Lee Dracula movies, I'm a big fan of those. And Cushing, when he's playing Van Helsing to Christopher Lee's Dracula, it's just delight to watch. And again, in kind of a B movie schlocky kind of way, almost.
And I think it's
but nobody does it like those two.
No.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Later in his career, he plays Watson. I was looking at IMDb, which I sure must have been fun for him. Like, okay, I played, the detective. Now I'm going to play the sidekick. So,
yeah. But we also, like I said, had Bernard Cribbins, who plays Tom Campbell, our little kind of not really bumbling, but just kind of out of his depth.
Yeah,
police officer. Yeah. So he's a police constable. So obviously plays Wilfur Mott in Modern Who, but also played a character named Arnold Corns in an 8th Doctor Big Finish audio, and I love the title of this, Horror of Glam Rock.
Ooh, that is nice.
Which is a great one. It's a great one. So it's where the 8th Doctor and Lucy Miller go back to the days of glam rock, if you're at all familiar with it. So we're talking, let's see, like... what would be a good example?
Oh, Poison, Bon Jovi, Cinderella, Motley Crue.
No, not so much the hair metal. That's more hair metal. I'm talking T-Rex or, like the British 70s bands.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so that kind of
Ziggy Stardust? Would that be?
Kind of, but I mean,
Bowie. Kind of on the cusp, yeah.
Yeah, it was a little bit more, it's like kind of half glam rock, kind of... a little pre-new wave almost with Bowie and Ziggy Stardust. Okay. But at least that's the way I would consider it. But he's also been in episodes of Fawlty Towers, and he was in the 1967 Casino Royale. So yet another Doctor Who James Bond connection. Had to throw that in there. Roberta Tovey plays Susan, or sometimes called Susie by Doctor Who. And she was only, she appeared in the previous movie, Doctor Who and the Daleks. Jill Curzon plays Louise. Ray Brooks plays David. Andrew Keir as Wyler, and he was in the 1963 Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Notably
See,
enough.
all these folks had amazing careers,
Right.
John. I think that it's just for fun, seriously.
Yeah, because he was also in Rob Roy, and he was also in Dracula, Prince of Darkness with Christopher Lee. Speaking of those Christopher Lee Dracula movies I love so much. Philip Madoc, I have to mention Philip Madoc because he is a huge Doctor Who vet. Very, it's one of those actors that's very beloved by fans because here in this movie he plays Broccoli, these conniving opportunist. Essentially, taking people's gold rings and probably off dead bodies in the process, or maybe some live ones too, to further his own profits. He's a profiteer essentially, but he was in several classic Who stories. He played Elec in the Crotons from the Patrick Troughton era. Notably, he played the Warlord, one of the big bad in the War Games, Patrick Troughton's final story. He played Dr. Solon in The Brain of Morbius, the Tom Baker classic. And he played Fenner in The Power of Kroll from the Key to Time season from Tom Baker's era. He also did a couple of Big Finish audios. He played a character named Rag Cobden in a Colin Baker Big Finish audio, Return of the Crotons. And he played a character named Victor Schaefer in a Sylvester McCoy Big Finish audio with Master. So check those out, especially Master. Really good. Really love that audio. Highly recommended. So that's basically our cast. Nick, did you have any other ones, anything else that you'd like to add to that?
No, you basically, as always, as you brilliantly do, Charles, you pretty much ticked all the boxes. So I don't have anything else to add. But it is interesting, as I'd mentioned before, how many of these actors were in way loftier projects than this. And I really think it's like either they had nothing better to do, or like, okay, this looks like a bit of a laugh. Let's do it.
Yeah. Or do you think they maybe just did it for the paycheck?
It could be. I mean, because there are some actors here that I will say seem to be phoning it in a little bit.
Yeah.
But especially somewhere they can do better. So I have a feeling it might just be, we don't have a gig right now. We'll do this, to tide us over till the next one comes along.
Yeah, Peter Cushing's probably like, well, I got this gap between Hammer horror films. I guess I'll go ahead and fill it with this. Yeah. So some trivia. Amicus Productions, the production company behind this movie, and also Doctor Who and the Daleks, they bought an option, and I think, Nick, you mentioned this earlier, they bought an option to make 3 Dalek-related stories from Terry Nation and the BBC for the whopping price of £500. Mm-hmm. That's all it cost to get the film rights.
Wow.
Back then. Production of the third film, which was going to be based on the William Hartnell story, The Chase, which was the third appearance of the Daleks, was scrapped because apparently this film underperformed at the box office. I don't know what exactly it made at the box office. I tried to track that down, wasn't able to find it, but this film's budget was a whole whopping £286,000.
Yeah, I mean, it does not surprise me that they did not make a third movie.
And that was 60% larger than the first movie.
So just for those of you who don't want to go to...
So basically this is a movie on the cheap, needless to say.
Yeah. If people don't want to go to Google, that's what I did for you. That is about £8,000 in cost of today dollars.
Yeah.
So incredibly cheap. Even in today, even if you look at it in today's, the right for £8,000
right.
to do 3 movies is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
the 3 of us could go out and make that right now, I reckon.
Probably. And you could probably make it better shooting it on your phone.
Yeah, which folks have actually done, apparently. And apparently it seems to be becoming the new thing now.
I don't know what Jesse's doing over there, but I'm really interested in what he's up to.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking about us doing a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
We could make 8K. We could make 8K in a Kickstarter and do a film. We got a writer.
I've always wanted to do a Doctor Who fan film. I've always wanted to do that.
Yeah.
So obviously just, one of the things that, again, time, because, hey, I'm doing a podcast. So
exactly.
So, and I'm hoping our audience would appreciate that more. But
we should think about doing a Doctor Who audio drama.
Well, that's something I've discussed with our certain executive producer, Rob Southgate. So
that would be good. I would love
fingers
that.
crossed. So we'll see if that actually happens or not. I would love it if it did. Production was complicated by the illness of Peter Cushing, who I guess that required some rewriting of the script to reduce his on-screen appearances. So essentially, like, we pay for Peter Cushing, but he's not feeling so well, so we'll just cut him out of some scenes. Nobody will mind, right? No big deal, right? It's only the star of the movie. So, okay.
But there is this to be said, Charles. The story is pretty much threadbare, so probably nobody did notice.
I'm sure they did. This is the first use of rels as a Dalek time measurement, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Oh, that is interesting.
They give us that.
Yeah, so that gets later used in, of course, comics and TV shows. The various Doctor Who TV series. Peter Hawkins and David Graham, the voice of the Daleks in this movie, are the actual voices of the Daleks during the Hartnell era. So they got the actual Dalek voices at least to do these movies, even if they didn't get anything else, apparently.
I wonder what those folks were paid. Maybe a sandwich and a beer.
Who knows, right?
Well, the theory,
like a pint and a packet of crisps. That's all it costs, right?
Right. The theory, you could almost make the argument that the movie producers are thinking the Daleks are the real star of Doctor Who, so we want to get that right, and then we'll throw the other stuff, and people will want to go to the theater to see a big screen version of someone fighting the Daleks.
Yeah.
Well, the Daleks were all the rage at this point, weren't they?
Sure.
On the playground and what have you, kids were loving the Daleks, so it stands to reason, I guess.
Yeah,
they wanted to capitalize on that.
Yeah, essentially, in addition to Beatlemania, Dalek mania was in full force at this point. Yeah, that's a great point, Jesse. That this is essentially an attempt by these producers to capitalize on the popularity of the Daleks, because essentially after the first serial, the Daleks in 1964 or late '63, excuse me, that they started coming out with all these different Dalek toys and just merchandising, and so this became kids were playing it, like you said, Nick, on the playground, imitating the Daleks, and it just took off. So it made sense. It was it was a marketing thing. Like, hey, we could probably make some money with this and capitalize on this Dalek thing that these kids are all crazy over right now.
Not to mention that there actually is a documentary out there entitled Dalek Mania, which is all about this. And folks, definitely check it out because it's very, very fun. It's very informative, I found.
Yeah, and I believe is it Roberta Tovey who played Susan in this part of that?
Yeah, she's part of that. Yeah, it's a really great documentary. Kind of like goes into the whole thing, kind of like Beatles Mania, which you mentioned, Charles, and it kind of almost equates it to that, if you will. Yeah. It's very informative and fun. Yeah, Dalek Mania is worth checking out. I believe it's actually on YouTube. I didn't say that, folks, but I am just putting it out there.
I want to say it's also on the Blu-ray of this movie.
Yeah, it is. Folks who own the Blu-ray will have it on there, but folks who don't own the Blu-ray, you can find it on.
Okay, I thought it was on there.
It is.
I mean, that's a good excuse for me to sit down and watch it now. Since Susan is depicted as a child in this movie and in the previous movie, they decided, well, hey, I guess we better change this original subplot that Susan Foreman had this romance with David in the TV version of the Dalek Invasion of Earth, and being left behind by the Doctor on Earth. So they got rid of that. Probably a good move. Because the last thing we need to make is this movie is really creepy on top of being like B-movie sci-fi.
Absolutely, yes.
I thought I'd mention this. There's a lot of differences, obviously, between this movie and the TV story that it was based on. But primarily the plot's resolution is different because in the TV version, the bomb is diverted to the Dalek ship to destroy them. But in the film, it's the Earth's magnetic properties that drag the Daleks to the Earth's core and destroy the flying saucer somehow.
Our Mother Earth itself, or something along that line, which I go, you shouldn't be from Earth. And let it go, Jesse, let it go.
You just kind of have to set that aside. I know it's
exactly.
It's very hard, especially after, doing 7 years of a Doctor Who podcast.
Yes, exactly, Charles.
So you could be excused for that.
Thank you, Charles.
All right. So anything else? Any other trivia anybody wanted to mention?
No, the only other thing I would just wanted to say, Charles, is it's true that I can see, folks understandably like Jesse and, yourself. And I was kind of like,
Right.
why is he from Earth? But, I guess you really have to let it go, folks. It's like another Earth, the multiverse, if you will. This is a Doctor Who from another universe. So just don't pay attention to the fact that he's not Gallifreyan and Gallifrey's not even mentioned and what have you. So I might actually have to go back and listen to the review you guys did of Doctor Who and the Daleks just to see what your thoughts were at the
Just
time.
to see how bad it was back in episode 27 compared to today.
Be kind, because we were very new back then.
Well, especially me, because this was like the whole 27th episode I'd ever done, because this is Next Stop Everywhere is the first one I ever did. So, all right, so 3 topics. And let's talk, obviously, topic number 1, let's talk Doctor Who. I'd love to know what Doctor Who's first name is, wouldn't you? Probably Dr. John Who, right?
Yes.
Dr. John Who. Also, let's talk Tom Campbell, Susan, and Louise. So the other 2 Who's. And get your thoughts. So, Jesse, we'll start with you first. What did you make of our TARDIS team as they travel to the year 2150 AD, only to find that it basically sucks?
So there is a little bit of thread of this show that we adore. Mm-hmm. The main character is curious, and Susan shares that, like, oh, well, grandfather is going to want to look into that. She talks about that. Mm-hmm. I like how Cushing looks at the Doctor. His hair is a little too in place, like it's almost
like a wig,
helmet hair. But overall, the costume looks well.
To be fair, people said that about Pertwee too. So
okay,
sometimes
I love that. We did see the Doctor, very active in dressing, though there is a little bit of, his big plan is, I'm going to pretend like everything's fine, and then I'm going to run like I'm a little bitty kid, and go to the school assembly microphone and go, no, I mean, that was like, really? That was was his plan?
Yep. Well, he knew he had to get to the microphone, so he just kind of played along. And
yes.
He grabs it and says, okay, you Robo-Men, attack the Daleks. And by the way, this order can't be countermanded. So
yeah. Susan was very young as I was watching this. I went, oh, wow, she is a child in this.
Yeah.
But,
essentially it counts as child endangerment, I would guess.
Well, I had shared with you, right, my worry about Ace being underage.
Yeah. What are you crying about, man?
Exactly.
This girl's like 8.
It does look like she's that, I guess 11 or 12 maybe, but she's young.
Yeah.
And she's very, I just thought this was truly, as you guys talked about, this was a mindless popcorn film. And especially if you think that the main character is Professor Y or put some other name, you can especially enjoy this, and you give up the thought that it was. I do love, and this is probably because growing up and remember watching, Westerns in Cinescope and Elvis Presley's in movies, that vivid color that it is almost seems unreal.
Yeah.
It's
brighter than bright, that kind of thing.
Fun.
All right. Nick, how about you? What did you make of our TARDIS team? This is obviously the second movie. I'm guessing you watched the first one before. So what did you make of this sequel?
Okay, is it bad that once I finished watching this movie, I went back to watch Doctor Who and the Daleks?
Maybe a little bit, but that's okay. It's a guilty pleasure.
I was like, I'm in the mood for cheese. Yes. So I was like, okay.
Give me all the cheese. Bring it to me now. Yes.
I was kind of on the roll because I was kind of like, maybe I should be watching the next film for Gold Standard. Screw it. I'll watch Doctor Who and the Daleks. Let's go something really sort of super low brow. And so I watched it. But
there you go.
It made me want to check it out. Here's the thing. Peter Cushing is fantastic. He's carrying this movie because, when it comes to Roberta Tovey, she does decent with what she's given. I mean, for a child actress, she does a decent job. And she had, showed her chops somewhat as well in the previous film too. Jill Curzon, I mean, she's a gorgeous, gorgeous woman, beautiful to look at, but that is really what all she is at the end of the day. I'm very sorry to say that because I'm a fervent feminist, and I love to see my women strong and dynamic. Dare I say Louise is almost a nothing character because she basically does nothing except kind of sort of walk around and look pretty and sometimes a little bit accident prone. That's pretty much all she does.
Well, she just kind of accompanies Tom while they're on the spaceship together.
Yeah, she's kind of like it's kind of the role of the eye candy in your kind of, C-list horror movie or B sci-fi movie because you have to have the hot chick, as they say, in this kind of film to kind of, give the eye candy. And I was really sad because Jill knows how to act, and this was not acting. She really kind of phoned it in. And I was like, you could have even just had Doctor Who and Susan, and that would have been fine because there's really nothing for Louise to do. Other than that, I mean, you have to, if you take it for what it is, if you're not going, putting your big film critic glasses on and you kind of take those off, it's like, okay, I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is. I'm not going to say, oh, the pacing was crap, this was terrible, etc. You enjoy it for what it is, and it was fun. But, if I had to pick at it, I would say that Louise, you kind of could have done without. And
she's definitely the expendable in this one.
Yes, Peter Cushing does, puts on a great performance because you could really see, as I said, when I was watching, I was like, you acted next to Olivier for crying out loud, and this is what you're doing.
Right.
But he was great fun. I mean, you could see he embraced the role. And it is the proto-dandy Doctor. So, as I said, I love John Pertwee. So it was kind of the proto-dandy third Doctor. So I was very, very happy with this for the most part.
So our friends over at Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV, Kevin, one of the hosts, very active at Dragon Con. And I'm sure this has happened at conventions you go to as well, Charles, where they will have screenings of movies.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing you talk about with you and Zan and Drunk Cinema. I'm sorry, if there's a double feature of this,
yes,
where you could watch with fans.
Right.
And, and have snacks and tasty beverage and kind of, with the closed caption, you could Mystery Science Theater 3000 it. That would be a fun double feature. It would be a blast.
I totally agree. It's just the fact that, as I said, it's so cheesy, though. In the sense it's bad. It's that kind of cheese where, actors are kind of phoning it in. There's like a very threadbare storyline, and it's just you're there for the ride. And Jesse, that's exactly the right context to watch a film like this in.
Well, yeah. I think I definitely recommend then everybody let Zan know that we should be talking these movies on Drunk Cinema because we would do exactly that.
Yes.
We would have our tasty beverages and we would do our Mystery Science Theater and have a pretty good ball with these movies, I think.
I'll have to have a word with Mrs. Sprouse tomorrow then when I talk to her.
Yes, that might be worth the effort. I'm just saying. So what do everybody think of Tom Campbell, Bernard Cribbins' character? Because for being introduced, I thought, his character, is probably one of the few characters in this movie that actually gets some interesting development.
And actually is acting.
Yeah, he's acting, and he's got a backstory. Like, oh, hey, he's this police constable who, as the movie opens, in a very amusing way. Like there's these bank robbers sitting outside, waiting for you. Like there's like a guy in a getaway car, and you hear this very dramatic, the dun-dun,
the Toccata Fugue in D minor by Bach.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, exactly. So I was hoping, Nick, you would know that off the top of your head. And I was not disappointed, sir. So it's obviously played up, and then there's an explosion at the bank, and then you see these robbers coming out and get in the car, and they get away from Tom, the police constable. So he sees this police box, and obviously being the police makes perfect sense. It's a great reason to get him inside that police box. Yeah. So he goes to phone this in because, remember, police boxes were still active at this time period. So he goes there, and that's where he encounters the Doctor Who. I keep wanting to say the Doctor. Doctor Who, Susan, and Louise. And, this is where he gets experience with the TARDIS and gets taken to the 22nd century. So we're off to the races.
Yeah, and I don't know if they did a very good explanation on why they just didn't push him out.
Yeah.
But one of the highlights of the film to me was the physical comedy of him pretending to be one of the robot henchmen.
Yeah.
Right? Where he is that person that's never been on the chorus line before and is trying to learn the choreographed dance next to the person, and he's one step behind. I thought he was very clever in that.
Where he's impersonating the Robo-Men.
Yeah, and he's
he's having to sit down and do their little dinner.
And he's just a little bit
out of step.
I thought
slightly off. Yeah,
I thought that was really funny, and I enjoyed that. I thought it shows what a great physical comedian Bernard Cribbins is,
which we already kind of know from Wilf, because he's
right.
He's always doing something kind of wacky. So
yeah, and then I did think, I guess he got superpowers in the TARDIS because when he comes back, right. Mm-hmm. One hit knocked out. One hit each of the three villains, right?
Oh, at the very end of the movie.
I'm going to be Detective Sergeant, and it was a fun ending.
Yeah, it was, because that's basically the ending, that once they get back to their normal time, and hey, how interesting was it that the TARDIS, or at least TARDIS, is able to return to the place where it started.
And a few minutes earlier.
So yeah, it's like, oh, hey, can you drop me off a few minutes earlier? Sure, no problem. We can totally do that. So it's kind of a little different again from the TV series by this point.
Yes.
So it makes sense because, hey, look, I wasn't able to stop these bad guys, these robbers. So if you could drop me off a few minutes earlier, sure enough, and he's just like bam, 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 and gets them all in the car, knocks them out with a billy club, and he's just thinking of hey, I'm going to get promoted.
Yes.
So that's the ending. So he kind of gets his little happy ending. He waves to everybody, and then that's the end of the movie. So it ends up on a good note.
It does end up on a good note,
and it's just it brings the whole movie full circle too. So
yes.
I thought it was a solid conclusion. But yeah, I love Bernard Cribbins. I think he was very he's one of the highlights, obviously, after watching him as Wilf, for watching this movie, for me.
And I like to think that I would have liked him even if he had not been Wilf.
Yeah.
But knowing that connection and seeing him young and
yeah, what did you make of seeing him young?
Yeah, very young, kind of handsome.
Did it weird you out a little?
No. Just not an overly matinee idol, but kind of a goofy leading man, and I think he did really well. I think
just another reminder that getting old sucks. Yeah.
Yes. Well, tell me about it, Charles.
Well, okay. So getting old does suck. So let me tell you about it.
I was cheering for him a lot. I was cheering as the actor having that role, hoping he would do well, and I think he really did because of my affection for him, because he is brilliant as a Wilf. I mean, he breaks your heart so many times, and in his scenes with not only Donna but with the Doctor, it's really neat to see. And I'm sure you brought this up when we covered these episodes, right?
Yeah.
The trivia, but it was kind of nice seeing him. And when I go back and watch those episodes with him in it, I'm going to have a little extra smile, that knowing that he as an actor must have been, how cool am I back in the Doctor Who universe,
right?
The official Doctor Who universe,
because that was 40 years after this.
Yeah. Not the Professor Y universe.
Yes. The real deal. Yes.
Yes.
Doctor Who proper. Yes.
Yes.
So Nick, did you have any other thoughts about these characters you want to share?
Well, Charles, first off, you touched up on the fact that we do get Johann Sebastian Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor. That seemed to be the go-to for pretty much any cheesy horror movie, or sci-fi thing. It was either that or it was Night on the Bald Mountain by Mussorgsky,
Yeah.
which used to be the ones that those tend. I mean, those tend to be like fan favorites. If you went back in time and talked to either Bach or Mussorgsky, saying, these great pieces of music that we created are being used for this kind of stuff. I wonder what they would have thought about it at the time. But
your pieces are nice and all, but they don't really count until they're in a Doctor Who movie.
Exactly. But also, having had a grandmother who pretty much raised me on the BBC, I had been exposed to Bernard Cribbins numerous times as a child, because he also did a lot of kids shows. And he has a beautiful voice, because no surprise, he does a lot of audiobooks and has done a lot of audiobooks, because he has that kind of audiobook quality kind of voice. And he
kind of like our own
did that
DJ Nik, I might add.
No, I did a few in my time, Charles, but as I said, they are cringeworthy, believe you me. But if anyone wants some torture, you can check those out. But outside of that, I just thought he's great. He's one of the few who really brings his A game to this, because I suppose maybe being a younger actor and wanting to do something, I suppose you just want to give it the best shot that you can, in the hopes that somebody might see this saying, hey, that kid's got talent. Let's give him something else. But
he's in a leading man role, so that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just fantastic. And I was actually hoping that him and Louise actually would hook up. And I kind of thought maybe they'd been in some hanky-panky when they get locked in the cabin by themselves. I'm like, cue sex scene, which you're not going to get. But I was hoping that maybe she'd give him like a peck on the cheek or some sort of kiss, because it seemed like there was some... And it would have actually worked for the music as well. It would be right in sync with it.
Thank you.
But I was hoping, because it seemed like there was some chemistry between the two of them.
Well, you noticed that he was going to get off the ship, and he's like, well, I got to go rescue Louise, because she's like the only hot chick in this movie. I got to go rescue her.
That's what I'm saying. It's all about rescuing the hot chick.
Right.
Outside of that, I did want to also make a quick comment about the music. It's really weird.
Yeah, why don't you talk about the score a little bit?
If I may.
Yeah, please do.
I love the John Pertwee era, but the big problem about the John Pertwee era is there's certain serials or episodes where the music is just way over the top and has nothing to do with what is going on screen.
Right.
And this seems to be the case here too. I mean, a guy, when we get all these disaster moments, you have these. It's like, what are you celebrating about? These people are dying.
The tone is completely off. It's tone deaf.
Yes, you have these very kind of strong brass coming in, and it's very sort of upbeat stuff,
and happy-go-lucky, and
it's like people are being blasted to death and gassed hither and yon. What is there to celebrate?
Like a carousel at an amusement park, almost.
Yeah, it made me think of the Gordon Ramsay thing that we talked about before. What's wrong with you?
Exactly.
It was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. All right. If nobody has anything else, let's move on. Topic number 2. Let's talk our supporting characters. Let's talk Wyler. That's the big burly guy who ends up kind of looking after Susan through most of this movie. Dortmund are physically challenged member of the resistance of this, who essentially is a kind of like a weapons specialist that is helping to create these bombs and just really wants to attack the Daleks. So let's talk about him. David, who, like I said, was supposed to be, in the original story, the Dalek Invasion of Earth was Susan's love interest, but for obvious reasons isn't that here. So essentially he gets the role of kind of looking after Doctor Who when he and Tom get separated. And let's also talk Broccoli, who, like I said, is up to no good, looking only out for himself, and apparently Captain Kirk has some thoughts about this. But we'll leave him out of it for now. But I want to get everybody's thoughts on this character. Yeah, exactly. Kirk. So Nick, we'll start with you first. So, what did you make of our supporting cast?
Well, first off, when it comes to Wyler, once again, here we're talking about a stellar actor. I mean,
Right.
Andrew Keir is huge. I mean, the man, for crying out loud, he was one of the first, he was, I believe, the first to actually create the character of Thomas Cromwell in A Man for All Seasons.
There you go.
And we're talking A Man for All Seasons. And, so you have all these stellar actors who are doing this, and he also was in quite a few Hammer productions.
Right.
So, as I said, it's the Hammer cast having a party. Seriously, that's what they've come here to do. And I actually really enjoy this character because he is kind of, your big burly guy with a heart of gold. Because I think he does play the gruff, rough chap. But he really, you see how concerned he is about Susan, especially because I believe he actually shields her when the flying saucer arrives.
Right.
And they could have thought of a better name. Why just it's a
flying saucer? Yeah. And you're talking about the like that great sequence where they essentially escape from downtown London, and they get into a van or whatever, a truck, and they literally ram through these Daleks, that are just happen to be on the road.
Amazing.
So how great was it just to see a truck splatter some Daleks? And
that was great.
And the windshields, spider webs, and so Wyler has to punch his way through that windshield. And apparently the actor actually hurt himself doing that in real life.
Okay.
So,
because those were the days of practical effects where you literally did everything for real.
No stunt guys probably couldn't afford him with this budget.
Yeah, exactly.
Who are you going to pick up? I mean, really,
so then
with this kind of budget.
Yeah, so they end up driving out to the country and trying to look for some help or whatever, get to this mine apparently, and then the flying saucer comes, and they realize, well, I guess we better bail from the truck because they're after the truck. And sure enough, the Daleks blow up the truck, and as soon as the truck's gone, they're like, okay, we don't have to look for any survivors or anything. Let's just leave.
Oh, who cares? So but hey, he does have his hero moment where he does shield Susan from the blast when the flying saucer destroys the truck.
Right.
And I said he's your gruff Scotsman with a heart of gold, and I enjoyed that. When it came to Dortmund, that was a strange one. Once again, you have a fantastic actor like Godfrey Quigley, who was in A Clockwork Orange. I remember him from A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, I forgot to include him in the casting. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. And also he was also in another movie which I love, which was Barry Lyndon as well. So we're talking two big Kubrick films. And and he was a curious one because, you have this, paraplegic who has this great plan of wanting to destroy the Daleks with these bombs, which seem to be a little bit faulty because they don't seem to do what they're supposed to do. But he dies a hero. But why does he have to die a hero with that super over-the-top music? Because as the kind of building is coming down him, you're like, celebrate good times. It's like, what's going on?
Celebrate good times. Come on.
I could kind of imagine ABBA coming out and dancing while he was being buried.
Doing Dancing Queen. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I thought that was so undignified because he went out a hero.
Well, yeah, because essentially what he does is he sees the Daleks at the other end of the street, and he knows that Wyler has to get away with Susan. Yeah. So essentially he provides cover. He's like, okay, you guys go and escape. I will face the Daleks. And they're like, wait a minute. You're like, you're just one guy against a bunch of Daleks. You're going to get killed. And he's like, he's packing all kinds of explosives. He throws those explosives, does squat against the Daleks. But it just so happens it does pretty well against the brick buildings that are surrounding him, so all the bricks fall down on top of them.
It's terrible. As I said, that huge music. Play like a soft piano or something, or like those very sad violins, Yeah, but as I said, he goes out a hero, so more power to him. And he's the one who's kind of he's like the chief of the resistance, if you will, when it comes to the whole plan and everything else. So something a little bit more dignified for this character would have been nice. And Philip Maddock as Broccoli, well, another fantastic actor. I was a big fan. I don't know if either of you were familiar with the BBC show Dad's Army.
I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it.
If you guys are like fans of Fawlty Towers and what have you, Dad's Army is right up your alley when it comes to that, because you have the likes of Hugh Laurie in there, and obviously a very young Hugh Laurie before he did House, obviously.
Right.
But he's in there, and Philip Maddock was a big part of Dad's Army, and that was the reason why I knew him. And he's a hilarious character, and he plays villain very well. I was very impressed. He reminded me a little bit of that character from The Enemy of the World, from the Troughton era, where, that kind of more kind of sniveling, almost Weasley character.
Well, he was the warlord, remember, in the War Games. So
exactly.
So that's a perfect example of that.
So you wonder whether maybe that character had been inspired by Maddox's performance as Broccoli, because the character in The Enemy of the World is very similar to this. Mm-hmm. And so I just
he does have that very punchable face, doesn't he?
Very much so, and that grin and the fact that Tim, it's all about the money. And I did have my fist bump moment when he got his deserves. Like, yes, take it. You know what I'm saying?
You were definitely rooting for the Daleks in that one.
That was a good moment.
Curse your sudden and inevitable betrayal.
Absolutely.
I was just like pointing at the screen going, that's what you get. But no,
you're a bad man, and you deserved all the badness that you got.
Well said.
For being bad, yes.
He granted he had a small part, but he was great. And one of the actors who once again did not phone it in and did a great job, because you really hated this chap from the beginning to the end. And when he's like preparing breakfast, he's like, "Do you want some?" And he pours like water over it. It's like,
no, you know what he did? He's like, "Hey, you want some?" So David goes down to reach for some, and then he kicks the can over into the fire. So it's like, you dick. You absolute dick.
I was thinking to myself, you are dead. You are so dead.
Oh, yeah. So Jesse, any thoughts about these characters?
Yeah, you well said, Nick. I did like watching, him taking care of Susan and the interactions there. Yeah, Wyler. And, the scene where he's, ma'am, he tries to convince the people to let them in. It's going to be safe. They later betray them.
I was kind of disappointed they didn't get theirs from the Daleks.
I didn't get that either. I thought it was really well done. We've already talked about, watching the sniveling, black market guy get his. Mm-hmm. And, it's always, why do you think it's going to work out? Trusting the Daleks.
Never does.
No, it never does. So I really like that. Now, one thing I didn't bring up, and I want y'all's thoughts on. I was a little unhappy with the obviousness of Susan's note on the wall in broad,
right.
Like if he had just turned around, and like, oh, I wonder why Susan didn't leave a note. She normally does. And then they
go out of their way so that he won't see the note is what you're saying.
Yes. It was kind of like, come on, guys. But anyway, great supporting cast, especially considering, they're having to carry a lot of this to work through. Good interactions. You've split this up into 2 or 3 groups. And each of them kind of have a good, the Doctor Who's companion in loose terms works well. And there's a lot of nice dialogue back and forth, Susan and Wyler. So I enjoyed their discussion, and it was good. It's a solid B movie.
Okay. All right. Anything else about these characters?
Well, I think Jesse pretty much said all that needed to be said. It doesn't. Though I do feel if any other B movie would be thankful to have actors of this caliber on their film. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, the joke about there are no small roles, only small actors, right? These guys were giving it. They were playing it well, and
they're professionals. So they're probably, it's obviously, I think a lot of British actors kind of take this, more seriously. They feel as it's their duty to follow through. So,
I agree.
Consequently, they were going to do this. They weren't just going to try to phone it in.
Yes.
It's like you're not in the UK. You're not a real actor unless you've done Shakespeare, and then you're not considered to be an actor, which is kind of like the rites of passage that any actor worth their salt in the UK at least has to have done. Because they're not even going to look at you. You have to have done at least one have had a Shakespearean role in some form or shape.
Right. I'm sure a lot of these actors probably thought this might be a career builder because it's a sci-fi movie. It'll get some attention and raise my profile as an actor.
It's what all the kids are talking about, all the young people.
Yeah, all those kids are talking about Daleks, so I'll sign on for this.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right, topic number 3, final topic. Let's talk the Daleks and the Robo-Men. So the Daleks, as we find out in this one, their big plan is to drop a big old bomb into a mine shaft that will go down and destroy the Earth's core. Then they're going to essentially replace that core with a device that will let them, for whatever reason, pilot the Earth around the galaxy. Presumably like a Death Star. And then they can go attack other planets. Presumably. So that's their big plan here. So, Jesse, I'll start with you first. What did you make of the Daleks and their Robo-Men? So we have essentially brainwashed humans serving the Daleks.
So first off, it doesn't sound like you're that impressed with the plan, Charles.
I've never liked this plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even in the original episode, the story that was based on, I never thought it was a great plan.
I do not have a pair of aviator glasses.
They've had better plans.
I would have put on my aviator glasses when we pulled up, with you guys seeing them. I've already talked about how much I loved the physical comedy of Bernard playing the Robo Man.
Yeah.
Seeing the Daleks in Technicolor, all the different, the
beautiful
bright
colors
red
of the
and
rainbow.
bright blue. Yeah, I mean, just that is really, really nice. And
look at those pretty colors that the Daleks have.
I mean, and not just the nodules, but the base being different colors and everything. That was really cool to see. And because, and I'm sure when we've seen these other multicolor Daleks in Modern Who, I'm sure you smiled and went, "Oh, look, it's a callback to this really cheesy movie." Are you
talking about the iPod Daleks from Victory of the Daleks? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
They're the Daleks, and they say exterminate, and they get to fight and do, and then at the end when the Earth's core is pulling them, it looks like a couple of them they filmed and then they ran the film backwards.
Okay.
Right? Special effects, that's what it looked like, to do the special effects. It was cheesy, it was fun, the Daleks are defeated, humanity is saved, hooray, hooray. It was just, I keep saying the same thing that Nick does, and I do not mean this as an insult. It was cheesy fun.
Yeah.
I don't know what it. I'm sure it was trying to be something else, but it is what it is, and there's nothing that when you see the acting, you see what's done. This is a fun Saturday afternoon, or as you said, late at night. I can't sleep. I'm just gonna celebrate. I'm gonna, a cup of hot cocoa and some chocolate chip cookies, or a tasty beverage and popcorn, and I'm just gonna watch a cheesy movie. I just really enjoyed it.
Okay. Yeah, but one of my favorite is when the Daleks are, they're being pulled into that core. There's one shot where it's become a very famous GIF. If you go on the internet and look for the "I regret nothing" GIF, and you'll see
Yes.
the Dalek kind of like spinning around backwards and then falling and banging against the sides of the pit as it falls.
Yes. I regret nothing.
I never get tired of that gif. I love it.
Okay.
So it's one of my all-time favorite gifs, the "I regret nothing" gif. But that's where it comes from. So I just love that. You just I gotta give it the credit for this movie. They had a lot of fun smashing up Daleks in this movie.
Oh yeah.
So Nick, how about you? What did you make of the Daleks and the Robo-Men in this story?
So here's the thing. I am a
movie,
big fan. I'm a big fan of the Daleks. I when some people ask me who's your favorite Doctor Who villain, it's kind of an equal tie with the three classics. So it's Daleks, Cybermen, and the Master. Those tend to be my all-time favorites.
The Holy Trinity, yeah.
Those kind of tend to be
unholy Trinity.
Yeah, exactly. Those tend to be my kind of all-time favorites. The problem is with the Daleks is sometimes they can either seem incredibly inept or they can be incredibly menacing. And here I think they lean more to the incredibly inept rather than incredibly menacing.
A little bit.
Because, I did appreciate the whole Power Ranger Dalek thing with all the various colors. Kind of remind me a little bit of the Power Rangers.
Right.
Yeah, like the red one, the yellow one, etc.
The green Dalek, the red Dalek. Yeah, exactly. The pink Dalek.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, oh, good, they bring out the Power Ranger Daleks. That's cool.
Go Power Daleks.
There you go. But look, it was fun for what it was, and unfortunately they hadn't upgraded yet to those lasers that they get later on, which were much more effective than this kind of gas, which you don't really understand what it is exactly.
You mean the fire extinguisher spray that comes out and apparently just kills people for no reason?
And I love that they use the same sound effect for every person that died. Every time you hear the scream, it was the same guy doing the scream for 58 different people. It's like, okay, gotcha. But
they only had budget for one sound effect, I guess.
Yes, and the gas thing is kind of weird because sometimes it explodes, sometimes it's like dead. It's both very sort of inconsistent. But they were fun to watch. The Robomen were. I suppose at the time it was like everything's kind of robotic, so we're going to give you these people who move like robots and everything else. But they were fine. I mean, they were just kind of the whole thing. I've been happy had they brought in actually the Cybermen. That would have been a little bit cooler than this. It's like if you were able to get the Daleks, you could have just had to talk to Kit Pedler and say, "Hey, Kit, can we borrow the Cybermen for this one movie?"
But shell out another 500 pounds. I'm sure you could have got them.
Exactly.
Pony it up.
Did you see the Dalek claw? They saw them moving this.
Right.
And I thought that was kind of cool because you normally just see the plunger or the egg beater, whisk, and so they had the little claw moving things around.
Yeah, and I thought it was great that we got the voices
claw's
from
our master. Oh, the claw's our friend.
the claw. Now I want to go and watch Toy Story all over again.
Yes.
But
the claw.
Brief parentheses. If ever you want to see me cry, folks, put me in front of one of the 3 Toy Story movies, and you will see me cry because those never fail to get me crying like a baby.
Challenge accepted.
Yes, those are really tough ones to watch for me. But no, I thought they were fun. As I said, I like my Daleks menacing and threatening. And interesting enough, it seems like they seem to be more threatening on Big Finish than they do in the actual TV shows, which is interesting. They seem much more creepy and scary.
The Revolution of the Daleks that was just on over the holiday, over the year, New Year. That was the Daleks are very creepy in that one. I will give Chris Chibnall credit; he does write creepy Daleks.
I agree,
especially now that they're kind of like jumping on people's backs and puppeting them around.
Now the fact the actual Dalek can leave the shell casing and do that stuff, that really, really was, I think, a stroke of genius because. Let's face it. Of course, aesthetically, they don't really look particularly menacing, and they really look particularly creepy, like say a Mondasian Cyberman does.
Yeah, but out of their casing, they're like alien. It's like the alien movie.
Like creatures,
like a face hugger almost.
And I love that, and it's interesting how almost one Dalek by itself can be so much more creepier than an army of Daleks.
That's something we've definitely talked about on this show. Yeah.
It's curious, but yeah, and I think folks just went to town when it came to destroying them. I can imagine the directors kind of go, and everyone's like kind of finding ways to destroy these things, and it was fabulous.
They look like they had fun destroying them. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. What were your thoughts, Charles? On
no,
the
the Robomen, they look almost like like a Devo album cover from the '80s, but
like the Velcro.
Right, exactly. But see, I'm approaching it from the fact that I'm such a fan of the Dalek Invasion of Earth, the original story. So I understand, what they're there, and I know that the plot is essentially borrowed from that. So even though the plan really is pretty silly, but hey, but the Daleks, I'm sure audiences at the time period were probably just like, oh, hey, we get to see the Daleks in color. How cool is that? Mm-hmm. And they probably enjoyed that, I'm guessing. Although, they probably were like, well, why isn't this more like the TV show? So it's probably a little like, well, on one hand, we get color Daleks, but on the other hand, it's nothing like the TV show that we're fans of. So, that's probably why it didn't do very well at the box office, I'm guessing. But yeah, just it is very odd, to see him spraying this gas, and they kind of do that in the first movie too. They just spray these fire extinguisher like special effects, and it's very different from the the laser beams, the extreme, when you, especially later years where you get to see their victims, get X-rayed, that X-ray effect when they get exterminated, and so it's a little bit of a letdown, especially when I noticed in some shots they fire their fire extinguishers and they don't even hit their target, and the target just kind of like falls over, like the fire extinguisher goes off to the left, and the guy running falls off to the right, like they had never been hit by the spray, and just dies for no reason.
That's serious Scaro technology right there.
Eat your heart out, Laurence Olivier. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, it's just fun. It's just fun to see them, especially at the end when they're getting sucked into the Earth's core and spiraling out of control, and then and then their flying saucer spaceship, which you can totally see the wires on throughout this entire movie, crashes for no real reason. Like it just like, okay, the Daleks are out of control. They can't pilot the ship, but apparently they're yet piloting the ship into the ground somehow. Okay,
it's a flying saucer,
right? And when it crashes, and when it crashes into the mine, there's this big explosion, and it looks like something right out of an Ed Wood movie from Plan 9 from Outer Space.
They couldn't afford that very sort of stereotypical mushroom cloud.
No. All they did is like, okay, let's light this campfire, and the models get set on fire, and so the flames are gigantic, in comparison to the model spaceship. Yeah,
fantastic.
Truly epic filmmaking. Yes, cinema at its best.
Agreed.
All right. Anybody want to add anything else to that?
What else is there to add, Charles? Well said.
Thank you. Did I pretty much sum it up? Okay.
You put a great exclamation point on the discussion.
Okay,
Good job.
Did I put a little nice shiny bow on that package? Okay, hopefully.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else about this movie that anybody wants to talk about?
I think we're good.
Favorite quotes? We got any favorite quotes from this movie? Anybody want to share?
I have one.
Okay.
I don't think there's a lot of great dialogue, but there is a couple where, see, with everything else, Susan, there's always an answer to be found if you only dig deep enough, which was a very Doctor Who-ish statement. So, I thought that was a pretty decent, quote.
That's a good quote. I liked, when Doctor Who, he gets out of that cell, and the Daleks are right there, and he's kind of like looking back in the cell. Question mark.
That is, yes.
That was really well.
That was pretty good. And then, let's see, the Daleks, they're doing their little radio transmission where they say, "Surrender now and you will live. Resist and you will be exterminated. Show yourselves in the streets immediately and obey the orders of your masters, the Daleks." And Dortmund replies, "Obey motorized dustbins. We'll see about that."
So, Nick.
So you go, Dortmund.
Nick, I now want to interview David the Dalek, who is a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, with Charles staying in that character for like 10 or 15 minutes. I now want that so bad. I love the boss, Do
you like my Dalek impression?
I love your Dalek impression. You are much better at dialogues and accents than you give yourself credit for.
I do all right. I just try to. That's one thing that I always picked up on as a kid. Watching TV shows, trying to do voices. All right.
I don't have that ear, but you do. I mean, you sound very good. And like I said, I get just the now.
It definitely helps when I'm writing. Let's just put it that way for dialogue. Good. All right. Nobody else? Any other quotes you want to share?
No.
Okay.
The only one I actually had was Dortmund, that one that you mentioned, Charles, which I think was probably one of the ones that really stood out because, let's be honest, dialogue-wise,
it's not that good. No. No. Not that good. All right, so this should be interesting. So what's everybody's rating? And Jesse says, why don't you start?
I'll go first. So I'll set the bar as he goes.
Okay.
This is certainly not a classic, but if you grade it on a curve and for what it is,
it's a pretty steep curve.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a solid 7.5.
Like a top of a roller coaster curve, that kind of thing.
7.5 out of 10, and for some reason I want to say bowls of stone soup. Remember the old parable where they were making stone soup when the mom and daughter were like, "Oh, we think there's a little meat in it. We have some soup." So I'm going to do 7.5 bowls of soup. 7.5 out of 10.
You reminded me of something. So in that scene where when Wyler and Susie are given the bowls of soup.
Yeah.
They didn't say thank you, and it bugged the crap out of me.
Well, and I noticed she was staring at the bread like, I'm going to steal a piece of bread.
Like, I am so hungry, I want that bread so bad. And then, but, and here they are, these apparently poor people, struggling to get by with the Daleks, and they give them their food, and they don't even thank them for it. So I was like, damn, that's cold. All right. Nick, how about you? What's your rating?
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out, Charles. And in fact, even Jesse, the fact that you got that one shot of the bread which goes nowhere, you were like, okay.
Yeah. You waited for something to happen.
Yeah, that is definitely not Chekhov's bread because it seems like there's something,
It's like there's starring the bread. Okay, cool.
Now, if a Dalek, blob had crawled out of that bread, that would have been something.
But, nice. I thought they were going to cut to Susan having this huge wad of bread in her. I didn't do nothing.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and as a tribute to that, I'm going to give this 6.5 out of 10 slices of untasted bread.
Nice. I love that.
That's a good one. So I'm probably the low man on this one. Although I do enjoy this movie in a schlocky way. So I'm going to give it 6 out of 10 flying saucers on wires that you can obviously see.
Well said. Yeah. And I guess I was just in the mood for a silly movie.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you as a Mystery Science Theater fan, I totally support that.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Very nice.
All right. So reverse the polarity. Well, this one's pretty obvious, right? So if you're going to watch Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD and you were looking for something else, well, I recommend the actual story that it's based on, Dalek Invasion of Earth, right? So this is the second serial from season 2, 1964, written by Terry Nation. And very quickly, it's, arriving in London in 2064, the first Doctor, Susan, Ian, and Barbara, not Tom, not Louise, find the city devastated and in ruins. They soon encounter a resistance group and learn that the Daleks have taken over, turning the survivors into slaves, working in a mine, and attempting attempting escapees into robo-men. They eventually discover that the Daleks are drilling through the Earth's crust so that they can blow out its core with a penetrative explosive capsule and then use a guidance system to pilot their planet around space. So a little fancier version of the plot that you get in Daleks 2150. The Doctor, knowing that after leading the human slaves in rebellion, the group uses a bomb to destroy the Dalek fleet. And the Doctor, knowing that Susan has fallen in love with a resistance member named David, locks her out of the TARDIS, and this is one of my favorite scenes out of all Doctor Who. Locks her out of the TARDIS and says farewell to her so that she can have a normal life, but he promises to return one day.
Yeah, it's a beautiful scene.
One day I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back. Until then, there must be no tears, no regrets, no anxieties. Just go forward in all your beliefs and prove to me that I am not mistaken in mine.
Yeah.
Love that scene.
And we're still waiting for a payoff. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're still waiting for that.
After all this time.
Yes.
It's like, okay, grandfather, anytime you want to return now.
Yes, absolutely.
Now that I'm an old woman, thanks for that. All right.
I have a feeling that her, Amy Pond, etc., have a support group for those who've been abandoned by the Doctor when he would come back.
Yeah.
I still say that Charles should write the abandoned companion support group, and we do that as an audio drama for our 7th or 8th anniversary. I just think you could write the heck out of that story, and we have enough regular contributors that we could do the audio drama. I just think that would be hilarious.
You notice that Jesse keeps pitching ideas for me to do things. Have you noticed
Absolutely,
this?
Yes. Well, you're the writer. You are the published writer.
Yeah.
I'm just the mere interviewee guy.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess somebody has to start a Kickstarter, I guess, to get that going.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So we do have some fan mail, so listener feedback. So writing in, once again, this time about Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD, Holly Mack.
Yay.
So I'll read Holly's, where she says, hello, Charles, Jesse, and Nick. Well, hello, Holly.
Howdy,
Hey, Holly.
So cool to see future honorary companion in my book, Bernard Cribbins, in this film. I have to say I enjoy Peter Cushing's version of the Doctor. The Daleks patrol / police crew were interesting. Magnets being the Daleks' downfall, nice little twist there. I have to say that I did enjoy the story, and I will be checking out the other Doctor Who movie with Peter Cushing. I'll wrap it up here, Holly from Wisconsin.
Well, good, Holly. That's good. I hope you enjoy it. It's going to be it's if you go in with the right mindset, I think you'll have fun.
And since after you watch that, if you want to go back, episode 27 of Next Stop Everywhere, where we did our original review for that movie. If you want to check it out, if you want to blast from the past.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
And then
also,
you want to read Dave Proctor's?
I will do it.
Okay.
So yes, David says, "Hello in the TARDIS."
Hello, Dave.
Yes, this story was very much like watching a retelling of a story you heard a bit differently. It works in my head like this. There is a universe where Doctor Who exists. In that universe, one of his companions that left him was looking for a way to make a living and wrote a novel about an adventure. This was made into the movie. The movie is entertaining but different than the reality. We know it isn't right because we saw the actual story. Imagine if somehow Doc Holliday got a chance to watch Tombstone. Good point. I enjoy seeing Wilfred Mott as a young man. I understand now why he studied the stars. Good point.
Yeah.
The police officer,
maybe Tom Campbell changed his name to Wilfred Mott. How cool would that be?
That would be very cool. Okay, that is in my Doctor Who canon now. That's what I'm yes. The police officer didn't need much convincing. His job suggests he is a curious man, but he accepts the TARDIS really quickly. There were some differences with the Dalek, we know, and these, I do like the multicolor models. They had pinchers instead of plungers and missed from their guns, not rays. Hitting a Dalek with a lorry breaks them. That seems a little fragile. More Who is always a good thing. This is interesting, and I was entertained. What else can one ask? Are you not entertained? That's me, not David.
Right.
Thank you, David K. Proctor. And thank you, David, as always, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks, Holly and Dave, for writing in. We always love hearing from you guys. You guys are always so supportive of our podcast and all our other podcasts. So I want to give you guys some appreciative thanks in that regard. I'm sure Jesse and Nick do as well.
Absolutely.
All right. So if you want to be like the cool kids, Dave and Holly, and you do, write to us, nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. That's nextstopeverywheresmg for Southgate Media Group @gmail.com. Or you can find us on Twitter @nextstopsmg on Twitter. Facebook, of course, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, or Instagram @nextstopeverywherepodcast. And Jesse, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter @JesseJacksonDFW. I am on Instagram and Facebook, but most of the social media I do hang out on Twitter. You can, if you are just now catching up on WandaVision, you can go to the Fandom Zone podcast that Charles will talk about in a minute, where he and I and Nick all went through all the different stages of grief that is WandaVision, and we just did a wonderful episode of the Superman and Lois, the new CW show that we all adored. And then How Many, the podcast where I do with other members, Bob and Scott, where we basically take a pop culture topic and debate it and talk about it. We just did one on breakfast cereals, which is getting us a lot of feedback that
that's a thing, apparently.
Yeah, like we didn't have good things to say about Special K, and we got someone saying, "I see
Special K is the bomb, yo."
Yeah, and then and Fruity Pebbles.
That's it. We're throwing down. That's it.
Fruity Pebbles better than Fruit Loop. Yeah,
what?
Yeah.
What is this insanity you're talking? Fruit Loops kicks Fruity Pebbles' ass.
Yeah, we had a whole episode where we just talked about different cereals.
I'm declaring a holy jihad on this. What the hell?
Wow. Also, then of course, Set Listing Bruce, where I talk to Bruce Springsteen fans from around the world. I am finishing up the Springsteen Friendship Month, where I talk to people that have made their friendship over Bruce Springsteen music, much like Charles and I did over Titan Fandom, and Nick and Charles and I over different podcasts. So it's very great. And then one last plea, please go to iTunes if you do and leave us a rating and review. The last review we got was on February 1st. We would love to get something new. We're at 45 ratings, and I'd love us to hit over 50. So I'm not too proud to beg, to quote the Temptations. See what you can do for us. Nick, how about you?
Well, as they say, when any good country song would start, well, so when it comes to me, for you country music lovers, I do host a Whiskey and Cigarettes show where we play today's country, traditional country, and everything else in between. For more info about that, you can visit our website. That's whiskeyandcigarettesshow.com. Podcast-wise, if superhero movies are your speed, I do host Happiness and Darkness, the superhero movie podcast. We're discussing all the movies from all the major publishing houses, be it Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Image, and more. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the Instagram. And also, last but definitely not least, Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast, where with those wonderful ladies that answer the names of Zan Sprouse or Rachel Friend, we're going through all the movies that won the Oscar for Best Picture from 1927's Wings to the present day. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, and if you'd like to join us and discuss your favorite Best Picture win, you can hit us up at goldstandardoscars@gmail.com. And hopefully next month we should be getting both Charles and Jesse, so definitely keep your eyes peeled for that.
What?
Yes, it might happen, folks. Stranger things have happened, but we might actually get these two fine gentlemen on to join us for sure. And what about you, Charles?
Well, me. As for me, @Charles Skaggs on Twitter, @Charles Skaggs on Instagram, Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee and hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here in Next Stop Everywhere. So Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, Big Finish Audios, and more. All kinds of comic book sci-fi news of my other podcasts for Southgate Media, including, the Fandom Zone Podcast, where Jesse used to be on when we talked Superman and Lois this past week, and we talked WandaVision, but he's bailing on us for The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so just going to have to put up with Nick and yours truly as we discuss those for the next 6 weeks, but hopefully we'll figure out a way to get Jesse back on sometime soon after that. So stay tuned for that. It's been a lot of fun, and WandaVision was very successful for our podcast, and I have no doubts that The Falcon and Winter Soldier will be just, if not more so. So I hope you guys tune in and come check out our podcast and listen to that as we review those episodes. And then, let's see, Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast I do with Zan Sprouse, whom you've heard here. Next Stop Everywhere, we talk all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch. And right now, we just recorded our first episode we're doing first of 3 episodes where we're going way back and doing a huge deep dive, talking On the Air, which was a very, very short-lived ABC sitcom that was produced by Mark Frost and David Lynch of Twin Peaks fame, featured a bunch of Twin Peaks actors. The first episode was actually directed by David Lynch, and we talked about that, The Lester Guy Show. That was the episode title. So if you're curious about that, it's kind of a little bit of obscure David Lynch history. And then we'll be discussing the next 2 episodes, and we got some plans for after that. So I hope everybody checks those out. And then last but certainly not least, Drunk Cinema, where Zan and I, we talk classic movies that we just love so much. We have adult beverages, adult conversation. We just finished watching Goldfinger for our 007th episode, the James Bond classic starring Sean Connery as James Bond. Had a lot of fun with that. And then coming up next, we're going to be discussing Forbidden Planet. If you're in that kind of like B-movie, sci-fi mood, Forbidden Planet is probably right up your alley because it was a 1950s movie that starred Leslie Nielsen and gave us Robbie the Robot, and Walter Pidgeon, I believe, is in that.
Yeah,
yes, and once again, another Best Picture winning kind of actor who does these kind of movies.
And I would argue that this is maybe not an A picture, but it's a B+ picture. This is a really well done
for
film.
the time period. It has amazing special effects.
Yes, and a very serious, a really in-depth storyline.
Yeah, this is one I've never actually seen it in its entirety. I've seen bits of it here and there, so I'm really looking forward to this.
I envy you the journey, Charles.
Yeah, I think.
And we're going to be discussing this here in a couple of days, so stay tuned.
I am looking
later
forward
this
to
week.
hearing that. Good. I'm looking forward to hearing that because I really am a fan of the movie.
Yeah, see, it was kind of like Zan's thing. It's a movie I haven't seen, so now my challenge from her is to find a movie she hasn't seen. So wish me luck because she's seen just about everything.
Yes,
You'd probably have to go and find either a foreign Russian film or an Italian film. I could give you a few titles, maybe.
Well,
Charles,
I'm a big fan of Asian cinema, but she doesn't like Asian cinema, so it's like that's a lot of movies she hasn't seen, probably.
Or you might have to go to Bollywood directly.
Yeah, so maybe I have to make my own. Who knows? We'll find out. But stay tuned. So check us out on Drunk Cinema because we have a lot of fun over there as we watch our movies and do our little commentaries for each of those. All right, guys, had a blast talking this movie with you. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did.
Great choice, Nick. Appreciate it.
All right. And Nick, you're always welcome. We need to have you back on more often, but you're so busy. So you're suffering from, my problem is that you're so busy doing these other podcasts, you don't have time to do shows like this one. So.
And plus, I don't want to wear out my welcome with you two fine gentlemen either.
Dude, please.
Always
come on.
You're our third brother.
Come on. People would rather listen to you than me. Come on.
Yeah, you're our third brother. So, yes, all the time. Welcome.
Come on. Who are you fooling here? Nobody.
So, Charles.
Yes.
What do we got coming on next week?
Well, next week is episode 224 as we discuss The Time of Angels / Flesh and Stone, the first Weeping Angel story from the Matt Smith era. And joining us as someone who we haven't talked to since 2020 when we talked The Lodger. So comics writer and artist Tom Zoller is returning to Next Stop Everywhere to discuss this great two-parter from Matt Smith's first season, Series 5 from 2010.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys didn't check the episode, but Charles can tell you, Tom shares a lot of insight from his writing background, and so sometimes him and Charles get a really good discussion going as they're both writers. And we had a great time talking to the Lodgers. I'm very excited about Tom coming back. This is always entertaining, and this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a great story. We got a great special guest companion. Jesse's back. You got to put up with me, but hey, everything can't be perfect. But I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you come back. And guys, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Nope. Thanks again. Another great job, Charles, keeping us on the straight and narrow. Nick, as always, my brother, I appreciate you. I appreciate, I love you. And Charles, I love you. And so let's, you guys go have a good night. Mutual.
Yep.
And we will talk soon.
All right. So guys, thanks again. Everybody coming back. Episode 224, The Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone with Tom Zoller, yours truly, Jesse Jackson, right here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.